Hello and welcome to this edition of Takeaway Tuesday, where today we're going to be discussing children's use of ambiguous terms and euphemisms when they're referring to body parts or sexual acts. We have all been in a forensic interview. The child is giving us a recounting of their experiences, and then they use an ambiguous term when referring to a body part, or perhaps a euphemism when they're talking about a sexual act. And our dilemma, our challenge is when and how we attempt to clarify these ambiguous terms and euphemisms. Should we immediately ask, what do you mean by, and let's say the child uses the word woo-ha in referring to a body part or to their genitals. Do we immediately say, oh, what do you mean when you say woo-ha? Do you have another name for woo-ha? Or do we just let them continue using that word, and we're not really sure, we're not 100% sure that we understand what that child means, and we also know that before the end of the interview, we will have to clarify this ambiguous term. Think of the following analogy. You're traveling down the highway. The road ahead of you is clear, and you're planning, oh, I'm just going to go straight. And this is very similar to, okay, you've asked a child for a narrative description of an event that they have shared. You're trying to gather all of the information. But you're on the highway. All of a sudden, a truck appears alongside you and then forces you over, and you have to take the next exit. You're unsure, one, of where you're at. You're not really sure how to get back on the highway and resume your travels. This is exactly what occurs when we as interviewers, when a child has used an ambiguous term or euphemism for a sexual act, if we immediately, as soon as that child takes a breath, we jump in and we ask, what do you mean by? Or do you have another name for? Or give me a definition of. We have literally moved the child off the information highway. And think of it this way, we are within a narrative description. We are having the child assess or access memory recall, because this is over a period of time, information moves to long-term memory. And we are attempting, by the way that we phrase our questions, is to access that long-term memory. We're really wanting to understand the totality of the child's experience. So we're on the highway, but we come in, and because we feel like we need to know immediately, what is another name for woo-ha? What do you mean when you say we had sex? We move that child off the information highway, and we're asking for somatic or recognition memory. And that recognition memory is stored in another part of the brain. So if you think about it, we're on the highway, we're gathering information, but we immediately force the child off. And it may be challenging to get that child back on the highway. So what we want to encourage you as interviewers to do when this happens, and it will happen often in a forensic interview, that a child will use words that we may have a good idea just because of our experience what they're referring to, but we're going to have to get that information from the child. So we encourage you to hang on to the tension of not knowing, that we want you to continue through the remainder of that narrative description, maybe even the remainder of the interview, that you just continue to use the words that the child uses, even if you're not clear about their meaning. Our hope is that as you use breadth and depth questions to gather more information about the child's experience, that eventually their meaning will become clear. Researcher Sonia Brubaker has said that we, as interviewers, we're very good about gathering the beginning of an event and the middle of an event, but we don't stick with those breadth and those depth questions, and we leave that memory recall too soon. That if we would continue exhausting the use of the breadth and the depth questions or cued recall questions, that we would eventually get the end of the event. And if we can get the beginning, the middle, and the end, often we don't have to ask for clarification. It can become very clear to us and the investigators on the case what the child is referring to. But let's say you've gone through the entire interview, child continues to use woo-ha, and maybe at the end you think, I just want to be clear that my belief as to what you're saying is the same as what the child is referring to. Then the literature suggests that we ask if a term, an ambiguous term is used for a body part, is to ask about location or function. That it's not a good idea to ask for another word or another term, because even some children, older teens, may not have the word that you're looking for when it comes to identifying body parts or even sexual acts. So function or location of a body part. And then when it comes to a sexual act, is to ask about actions rather than definition. What exactly did the teacher do when she touched you in the car? And so if you can focus on the actions of the event, not a definition, then you'll have a better and a clearer understanding of the child's experience. So hold on to the tension of not knowing. Work your way through the entire narrative description or the entire interview. And at the end, perhaps before you check in with your team, then you can ask the clarifying information, location, function, or action. If you'd like more information, please check out calio.org. Also look at the NCAC Virtual Training Center for different webinars and seminars that have been recorded with experts in the field. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please email me at the link below. Thanks and have a great day.